The Creative Suite, or in this case Photoshop, comes included with an incredibly useful application called Adobe Bridge. And what Bridge is, essentially, is a digital asset management utility, or as some refer to it, a media manager. And it allows you to view files on your hard disk, either organized by folder structure or just on your desktop, for an example, in a browser type setting. Now, one of my favorite things about Bridge is that I can view almost any file type as if it were open. Now, it used to be that if you wanted to view something like an EPS, for an example, you had to double click it and view it in some program like Adobe Illustrator, for an example. But since the introduction of Adobe Bridge, we no longer are dependent on having to view files in their native application. We can view them here in Bridge, which is extremely useful if you are working with multiple comps or file versioning and that sort of thing. So one nice thing, really nice thing about Bridge is that it goes hand in hand, especially with Photoshop, since Photoshop is a program for editing images. So if I have images open here and I want to open one up in Photoshop, all I need to do is double click it and it brings it into Photoshop. If I want to switch back to Bridge from Photoshop, I can just click on the Bridge icon up at the top. And if I'm back in Bridge and want to go back to Photoshop, I can simply click on the boomerang icon, and that is going to send me back to Photoshop. Another way that I can go back to Bridge is from the File menu and browse in Bridge. That's going to take me right back to the application. Another nice thing about it, since we're jumping back and forth between the applications, that I should point out is you don't have to have Photoshop open if you want to browse and use Bridge. But it's highly encourageable that you do that, because when you double click on an image by default, it's going to want to open up Photoshop unless you change that in your settings, and I'm going to show you how to do that later. Another useful part of this application in terms of browsing is, of course, we have the folder browser, but we also have the path bar across the top. And if you've been using Windows 7 or Windows Vista anytime lately, you'll realize that a lot of that functionality is in those operating systems. And what it allows me to do is, let's say I want to go back to my desktop, I can just click my desktop, or if I want to go back to my folders, or let's say I dive really deep down into some lesson files here, but I want to go back to my desktop, I can do it just that easy. So if you're not used to working in Adobe Bridge, I highly encourage you to start taking advantage of it. Especially if you work in work groups where you are maintaining a lot of digital assets, Bridge is going to simplify your workflow and make your life a lot easier.